Okay, this is going to be a brief video on my contributions to the game development project across the two games that we built as a team. The first one is a zombie twin-stick shooter, and the second one is the one that we showcased in the final lecture, which was the football game. Okay, I'm just going to go over each of the larger things I did towards the game, my thought process going into it, and the general code around it. Bear in mind that I'm on a computer right now that doesn't have a controller, so I can't turn to shoot, but just assume that if I rotate my character, he will shoot for the most part. Okay, I'm just going to jump into it. So this game is a twin stick where you fight on a circular arena, avoiding these various different types of enemies, and you have to shoot them in order to progress the level timer. So you can see generally how it works, and I'll go into some of the code as to how the enemies work. So in this folder we have the 4 enemies that I created all myself. The first one and the most simple is the zombie. Now I wanted the zombie to be a basic sort of grunt enemy that just focused primarily on just being like a bunch of hit points for you to get through. Just kind of follow you around, not be particularly interesting. Although I wanted the zombie to be able to scale up into the late game, because it's kind of boring if you just have one enemy. All it does is just kind of walks around and takes some damage. Maybe it hits you melee, but I mean it's not going to do too much damage. So what I've done is I've made a system where the zombie, as more zombies gather around it, it will gain more speed and damage, and so become a bigger threat. And you can see the system in play here. So what we do is every tick we get all the actors of a class, which are the zombies. For each of them we go through this branch, and all this does is this detects any zombies within range of the thing that this blueprint is within, which is a zombie. So we're just checking for every zombie if they're within range of the current zombie's coordinates, and if they are, then we just set their walk speed and their damage to a specific value, based on some log values that give it a nice sort of it makes the damage go up, but only to a point, because we don't want the zombies to be one-shotting our friends. And then if it doesn't, then we reset it somewhere else. So these are just some variables that I set up so that people could change the damage and whatnot, and that seems to work pretty well. And they're also the variables all available down here. So that just means that as we get more and more zombies, and I'll zoom out here and we'll place a bunch of them. You'll see that these zombies all will run very quickly towards me. Now the horde mechanic is in a radius around a zombie, and only a certain amount of zombies can be within the radius of one zombie, because all the zombies have hitboxes and whatnot. So each individual zombie will not have a huge speed boost if you get tons of zombies on the map. It's limited, it's capped, and it's using a log function as well, so it won't go crazy. But it just adds a little bit of intrigue to the game, and something just interesting for these zombies to do. Now you can see these zombies here are almost matching my speed, and if there was just one, then they'd be going up much faster. This is a good opportunity to explain my other mechanic. Now, I wanted the arena to be fairly open so that you weren't restricted as a player where you could necessarily go, but I also wanted to incentivize them to stay roughly in the middle. So watch what happens right now when we go outside of the map. Watch the health bar. So we're on 80 right now, and you can see it's ticking down quite slowly just as I'm at the edge of the arena. And as you can see, when I'm inside the arena, the health bar is going to go back up. We'll go over that later. Now, as I progress further and further outside of the arena, the health bar starts ticking down much, much faster. And that's based on a piece of code in the player blueprint. Now, if we go ahead and not load up the character base, we load up the character hero. And we zoom out of this, and we come down here. So every tick, what we're doing is we're going to set the a temporary max health value for the player if the timer is a value divisible by 20. Sorry, if the player's health is a value divisible by 20, because you saw that when we got to 80 health hit points, we stopped regaining health. Now this is a system as to where. Now I'm just going to bring up paint here because it helps me illustrate my point a little better. If we have the health bar here, we can chunk up the health bar into sections, and as the player loses. This is a stupid app. As the player loses health, the health bars will go down, but it'll only regen up to a certain point. and we've denoted those intervals with 20. But you can change that number by just changing this number here in the thing. So if the player's health was reduced to this amount, and the rest of the health bar was empty, they would slowly regen health until they reached one of these peaks, and then they would stop regenerating health. And this is so the player gets punished if they take some damage, but they're not totally out of the fight if they were down to, say, like 1 health point. They could still get back up to 20, they could still claw their way back up. So there's still consequences for taking damage, you still get punished, but you will go back up again slowly, if only by maybe 1 or 2 health points, on average 10. So the way we do this is we set the maximum temporary health by just using a modulus function here, and rounding up the health and whatnot. Then what we do is on a delay of 0.1, we just affect the health by it's a very small value. I believe it's the you can see here it's the width of the the radius of the arena, the playable space is 2066. So what we do is, because the arena is centered on 0, 0, we just get the player's location, and if it's above this number, then we just get whatever the number is and divide it by 200, and times it by -1, so that it'll take damage and not heal, and we just affect the enemy's health using the affect health function. Assume, by the way, that I'm building all of this from the tutorial that we were initially linked, so a lot of this stuff has been covered already, like how the players take damage, some of the basic enemy stuff, you know, like the shooting and rotating, that shouldn't really be graded. Okay, so then at the end, what we're doing is we're just healing them based off several numbers. So we have the max health, and I just divided by 1,000. This isn't like an arbitrary number, but I picked it because it seemed to work kind of well. If we'd have gone ahead with this project, I would have tested some of these things, but this is just kind of like rushed and got done. So what we do is we just check if the temporary health is the current health is below the temporary health, and then if it is, then we just apply it, and then if it's not, we just leave it and let them take damage. This all only takes place, by the way, if the player is outside of the map bounds. Okay, so now that we've discussed the player health, regen, and the regen is it's probably a very simple thing. It's probably, yeah, you just heal like 1/1000th of your temporary health if you're within the range, and yeah, it's pretty simple. So let's go back into the enemy folder, and we'll take a look at some of the other enemies. So the second enemy is the leech enemy, and this guy uses a laser, which is a beam emitter thing. It took me ages to get this to work. I still didn't get it to work quite how I wanted it, and I believe Harry got it working much better in the final version in the football game. So we'll take a look at that, just to point it out. But I find the lasers very difficult to use. Anyway, so what we do is we first detect whether or not we call them leeches, because they're supposed to sort of drain health from another player and gain it on themselves, but because you can't see the health bars yet, you can't see that, so it's not very apparent. So we just check, we use this thing again, I showed it to you in the zombie horde thing. I've used a couple of these things like over and over. We just check whether or not they're in range of the player. If they are, we slow them down by a ridiculous amount. I believe the player speed is 600, so 100 is pretty slow. And then we just we make them spawn in one laser and target the player, and then if they're not in range, then we just destroy the component right here. And then we don't apply these horde bonuses, I believe. The horde multiplier is set to 0. I was going to delete all of this stuff at the end of the project, just so that it would consolidate some of the space, but I left it in because I copied most of these. In a later project, I'd probably build them all into one main enemy with a base character thing, but I wasn't particularly good at Blueprint when I started this project, so I'm not too upset that all of this stuff is in here and it's kind of messy and stuff. So yeah, that's that, and then I believe the damage will be in here somewhere. Maybe. Alright, just assume that the damage is there somewhere. It's probably... I don't know where the damage is. Interesting. But that's all there is for the leeches. It just spawns the laser and then it drains the health. It's probably set to some... Oh yeah, here we go. Subfunction by name damage here, and it just deals probably a very small amount of damage at 1/10 of a second intervals. So there we go. So you're probably seeing the shaman healing thing. So we'll go into the shaman to explain that. Although it's not something that's in the shaman, it's something in every other character blueprint. So we take a look at the shaman. What we do is for each enemy, we check if there's a shaman and how many shamans there are within a range. Notice this, we've used this again. And we get the array index and we add one to it in time. I couldn't find a nice solution to finding the length of an array that was in the range. Like I guess I could add. What I could do is I could make another array and then add each of the arrays that pass this this little test to it, and then find the length of that array. But I just did it this way. It's just a way to, because the length of the array is always going to be, sorry, the index of the array is always going to be 1 minus the length, because it starts at 0, which is a little bit annoying, but whatever. So let's hide this for now. This just affects how difficult the shaman is. Okay, yeah. So we get the length of the array, and we come down here. We just make sure that we're not healing above the maximum health of the enemy, which is denoted by maximum health. So if the health is over above the maximum health, we just stop healing. We just stop doing anything, in fact. But otherwise, we're just healing the enemy by whatever this value is, which is denoted by how many shamans you have in a radius around you. So each shaman will heal for, it looks like 40 per tick. Tick seems a little strong. It might be that this is set to some interval or something that makes that not ridiculous. And then the shamans are also the only character that have the shooting enemies. Oh no, actually the necromancers do it later, but we'll get to that next. So the shaman will simply try and shoot the enemy. This is all done in the tutorial, so it's not too complex. Although I did add a I added randomness to a couple of the characters just to make them so when you get like 7 shamans or something, they don't all seem like they're all doing the exact same thing. And I was going to add a couple of variances to the AI, but we moved on to the project before I got to include that, so it's a shame. But this, but all this does is just have a random variable as to where the when the shaman's going to shoot. So he could you can see the shots per second here, and it's getting added here, the maximum value to 0. So on average, they'll shoot about 1.5 times the input shots per second, but the variance is 1 to 2 times. So you just set that a lot lower. Then in the fire event, what we did, or what I did, is I actually added a random rotator to the traj, which is the trajectory of the shot that's going to come out of this shaman guy. I just added a random whatever the across ones are, X and Y, I can't remember. One of them, I think Z is up, so X and Y. Just so that the shamans weren't always shooting. And I also found it was very easy to dodge. If you just walked in a straight line, the shamans would always shoot where you were instead of where you were going to be. So adding this randomness actually makes the game much harder, and puts it at a sort of reasonable level. So those are all the, actually there's one more enemy, and we will take a look at them now. So the last enemy, and we'll also showcase them at the end, one by one. So the last enemy is called the Necromancer, and the Necromancer's special ability, apart from being able to shoot, and it also shoots at a much faster rate, this number is set much lower, the Necromancer can spawn in zombies. So whenever a player is within range, etc., what we do is we get a random integer between 0 and 4, I think, at a difficulty basis. So I was going to add this function where, as you could set a difficulty, and then it would increase the difficulty of basically every variable. So this is what this difficulty base is, although I didn't ever get around to adding that because we moved on to a separate project. But basically, this is 1, so the every time this ticks, every time it's procs, the Necromancer is going to spawn 1 to 4 zombies around him in a bounding box that's in a viewport. So this bounding box here. I also made them spawn primarily behind him because the Necromancer is going to be looking at the player more often than not, and so spawning the zombies behind him means that if the player is shooting and trying to kill the Necromancer, which has a lot of health by the way, so it's like a prime target to kill. You really want to kill this guy because he's going to spawn zombies after zombies, and you know that they're going to be getting stronger and faster as more of them come in. So they spawn mostly behind him, so they're not blocking the player's shots. I feel like that adds like a little bit of quality of life stuff. So yeah, that's what the shaman does, and he seems pretty dangerous. So let's delete this guy, and we'll just take a look at the enemies one by one. So this is the zombie. He just runs towards the player. It's pretty simple. Oh, he's still got these guys in here. And then he'll deal, after 2 seconds, each zombie will deal like a little bit melee damage. So they're not too much to worry about, but you should just keep an eye on them and try and keep their numbers down so they're not constantly moving faster and trying to kill you. So the next enemy we have is the leech. So the leech moves fast and then slows down and uses his laser beam on you. And you can't see it now, but as he's dealing the damage, he's also gaining it. Although I believe in this version, he's gaining 100 times the amount that he's supposed to. He should only gain 100% of his laser ability, not like 1000% or whatever it's set to by accident. Okay, we'll just delete this guy as well, and that's all of them. Alright, the next one is the shaman. The shaman will shoot, and also, I mean, you can't see it again, but the shaman will shoot, heal the enemies around him. And you can see that random variance coming in. Now, as I'm standing still, it's quite easy to dodge, but if I'm moving around, I don't know if he's going to shoot like slightly behind or slightly ahead or what have you. And as more enemies come in and I'm trying to dodge them, it's becoming a little bit harder. So the last enemy we have to look at is the necromancer, and as you can see, while we're near him, oh yeah, he shoots way fast as well. While we're near him, he just spawns zombies, primarily behind him. Some can go in front. I like to add a variance, and I like to make the players think it's a radius around him and not just like behind him. But yeah, you can see as these zombies come in, it's getting much harder to avoid them. In fact, that one's actually running faster than me. So yeah, they can run faster than you, but I think it takes like 21 zombies or something. I did the maths. Okay, so those are all the enemies. Now let's take a look at some of the player stuff. So we'll delete the enemy zombie, the leech, shaman, we're all done with that character hero. Okay, so within the character hero, we can also, oh my gosh, I don't have a controller on me, I would love to show you this. So, we have some HUD stuff, some respawn shenanigans. Some of this is from a tutorial, some of this Harry built, so I'm not particularly interested in showing you. A lot of this Harry built, but I came in and I made it feel really nice, and I can't really show you that without using a controller, but you just have to believe me. So here we have this could be much more simplified. I'm much better blueprinter than when I started this project. But essentially, we have a equip map wrap an integer, and it just branches off and just checks if each one of these is correct, and if not, it just goes to the next one. And if it is set, if the equipped weapon is set to the correct integer, which is selected here, like if you press the this input action, you'll go to the machine gun, etc., and it will also set the integer. So the first one, for instance, is the machine gun, and that's the normal gun weapon. And then the second one is the laser, so that's the this laser thing. And then the other two don't really work very well in this version. Also, I can't shoot anyway because I don't have the right analog stick. But all this is doing essentially is just setting the type of weapon. The laser thing will just add a laser beam. Which follows there's something in the character viewport, like this thing, and this is the laser. So I wanted to make the laser like really long. It feels really awesome to use. It doesn't do much damage, but it has piercing. So if you're hitting 4 or more enemies, I believe, it'll be doing the same amount of damage as the machine gun in terms of DPS. But if you're just hitting one enemy, then it'll do like a quarter of the damage. Because I think the machine gun does like 100 damage. It's lovely math numbers. So within this fire thing. Yeah, so if any of these are correct branches, I could have used I can't remember if it's called switch or the other one, you know what I'm talking about, where it's you put in an integer and it will just select which execute to do. And either this will spawn bullets or print a string. This is not implemented yet, which is lovely. And the little quality of life change I did was I made it such that the second you started using any of these, it would destroy the laser component, and the second you started using this, it would begin the beam. So what you could be doing is you press the A button, for instance, to activate the machine gun, or although I believe the machine gun might be on Y, I can't remember, and you'll start firing the laser, and then you can keep the left analog stick held down, and then you can hit B, and you'll instantly start firing the laser, and the machine gun will instantly turn off, and it feels really nice, and I wish I could show you it. It's really cool. So the only other big thing, remember this is only a few weeks work, I put in tons of time into this project. So if we take a look at the blueprint, so this looks really messy and it took me ages to figure out. But this is the level progression system. So I wanted to build in essentially like 100 levels into this game that were all sort of procedurally generated, kind of. And the way I've done this is I went on an Excel sheet and I plotted out how many enemies. So I wanted this line to be roughly linear. This is levels at the bottom and enemies total per level in the game. So I wanted this to be kind of linear. It starts off getting a little bit faster, and I guess that's fine, because you want to ramp up the difficulty a little bit just to prove to players it's getting harder, and it sort of it becomes linear, slightly smoother than 1-to-1 ratio. So you can see here that I've got the level here, the probability of spawn, etc., etc. And if you look in these Excel things, I have lots of log graphs, because there are two main numbers that you want to be looking at. There's the time that the level is active for, and there is how many enemies you're spawning per second. And both of these do crazy different things. If you're spawning lots of enemies per second, that's going to be really, really difficult for the player to surmount. And if the level's going on for too long, that's going to be really boring. So you want to balance these really nicely and get a nice linear curve, and I think I managed that. So here we have the spawn time, and we start off spawning them for 3 seconds, and this gets lower and lower, but the spawn duration. Oh gosh, I don't know how this works. I built this a long time ago, and I stopped using it because we stopped doing this project. But essentially, this level progression thing is the number we want to look at. I spent hours on this, man. And those numbers are calculated here, and we just plug them into some stuff, and we figure out how many iterations of the thing we want to run and for how long. And this just loops through, and every time it procs, it'll go and it will find all of the spawners in the level, and for each it'll just spawn a little enemy for us using the spawn enemy function, and then it'll do some HUD stuff, which is great. And then at the end of the level, what we want to do is we want to wait 1 second, and then we come over here and we just check if there are any zombies or any enemies at all alive. And if any are alive, then we're just gonna wait until they become alive again. So as you can see, this true thing loops back, and it will just go back into this delay. So we just keep looping here until the player has killed the last remaining enemy, and that's just so you can. You don't get overwhelmed, because in my first couple tests, I realized that if you kept spawning enemies, eventually the players are going to get overwhelmed, and that doesn't feel really great. And if you if you could look at a set time, either they're going to get overwhelmed, or they're going to be waiting a really long time, and either way it just feels really boring or bad or like difficult, or it's just not good. So we have the system where we just wait until all the enemies are dead, and then we just spawn the next one. And then we were going to have something where during the middle of each wave you could pause and buy some items or what have you. But anyway, let's get into the spawning, and then I believe we're done. If I can find the spawning thing, I don't know where it is. Is that an enemy? Okay, enemy spawning. So this looks like a lot of stuff, and it kind of is. It kind of isn't. These are all basically the same module, so just go through one, and then I'll assume you understand the rest of it. So this spawn enemy thing here, we're just calling it here, and we're taking the level because that changes the difficulty and the probabilities of each enemy spawning. So let's just hop over to this lovely Excel sheet that I've got. And go to this probability of enemy page. This is a lovely equation, I use it all the time. So we have the zombie, enemy, shaman, and necromancer, and we have their probability of spawning for the first, I think it's like 300 levels or something. And I didn't type in each of these numbers individually. I used this formula to calculate it. I can go into more detail about this, but I think I've done in my previous blog posts. So essentially what we have is this is the probability of them spawning at level 1. So we have mostly zombies, a little bit of leeches just to spice things up, and then a small chance of the shaman or necromancer spawning, because they're like pretty easy, difficult enemies, so we don't want them getting piled on right away. But only like 5 enemies are going to spawn in the first wave, so we'll probably see a shaman, we might see a necro, that sort of thing, but we're mostly going to get zombies and maybe a couple leeches thrown in. And then as the game progresses, we'll see much less zombies. This is the probability of them spawning at level 100. So the zombie probability is 30, the leech probability is level 30, is just regular 30, and the shaman probability is 30, and the necromancer is only 10, because these are like some tough big boys, so we don't want our friends getting overwhelmed there. And as you can see, each of these adds up to 100 really neatly, and this is all the levels. So at level 100 we should see it was like 30, 30, 30, 10, and as we say 30, 30, 30, 10, and you can see the formula I've used up here, and it's reminiscent of this big Bolden formula here. And we can change these numbers if we wanted. So the system is built such that someone could go in and change it. If we decided that, hey, the zombies are spawning way too frequently, we need much less zombies, we just change this to 70. All of these numbers you're going to see change right here. There we go. And we need to put that 10% somewhere else. So maybe we'll put 5 on leeches. So we'll just say that 15% leeches and 10% charms. And we're just going to see a little bit more variation there. So you can see this number changes to 10, this number changes to 15. But these numbers are going to stay the same. So say, hey, the zombies really not cutting it. We don't think they're difficult enough. You just set it down to 10. And then you can see, if we go down to level 100 now, you'll see that only 10 zombies are spawning. Now, the only player input thing that you have, the only user input thing you have to do is you have to make sure these numbers add up to 100. Otherwise, the way the blueprint works is just not going to cut it. But other than that, you just plug in these numbers and it's great. So we'll go into here and we'll just take a look. So this immediately doesn't look like my spreadsheet, but I assure you it is exactly like this. So this literal float is just the number of levels, the number, well, the maximum level that you're expecting a player to get to, or sort of envisioning a god player might get to, -1, and then this and this are just the percentage, or the percentage of enemies converted into a number between 1 and 0 at level 1 and at level 100. So you remember we had 70% for the zombies and then 30% at the end, so it's just like that. And all of these numbers should match up, I believe, so that's great. And what we do is every time we spawn a zombie, we just generate a random value, and we just check if it's greater than any of these numbers. So it's probably, less than or equal to. So at the start, this number is going to be 0.7, so it's going to be, I believe this is a random value between 1 and 0, yeah. So this is generating a number between 0 and 7, this whole column right now, and so it's likely that this number will be much greater than this number, causing this to proc and the zombie to spawn. But if this number was, say, 71, that means, so 0.7 plus 0.2 is 0.9. So it's probably going to be the case that, if this is 71, then it's not greater or equal to 0.7. So it will be greater or equal to whatever number this is, 0.9. And so we spawn the leech, and then the next difficulty mob up is the shaman. And then the shaman adds 0.05, so this number would have to be 0.05 through all the way through. And then this number is like this is like 100, so you have to get actually 100 to spawn this game. And so all this will do is this just takes the execute, and it goes through all the branches, and it will just check which one's which. I think I could probably do a better version of this with switch and using the integer thing. But this is the system I came up with, and I quite like it. This is kind of overkill, but it makes the system really scalable. And later on, I figure out how to use macros, so I'd probably just put it all in a macro, and then all of this would just be like one tiny little box with like 4 inputs, and it'd be great. But unfortunately, I didn't do that because I'm not smart enough. So that's my contribution to this project. Oh, I also designed this arena such that it would be WASD, please. Such that it would be circular, and you'd always know where your player is on a map. If I just press F11 here, we can go to full screen and lag out the game. So you'll notice that wherever I navigate in this map, I can always see either the center circle or the edge of the map. And I designed, I was playing this previously, and it was just like a plain blank wall, and it was really difficult to tell where your player is in relation to anything else. So I added this circle in the middle, and I noticed that some players were kind of getting stuck on it. They thought, hey, if I go off the circle, am I going to die? But after a few iterations of testing, I imagine this game is going to be, you can just hit restart and you're just straight back into the game. So I'm not too worried that players are going to get stuck like thinking, oh, I can't go off this circle, because eventually they're going to wander off and realize that they're not taking damage or what have you. So that's all my contributions to this game. Apart from some other stuff, it's dumb. There we go. Okay, we'll go over to the ball game now. So the main few things I built in this ball game are the goal movement, the camera movement, and the win conditions. So we'll go into the goal at the start. So I believe this will be under something blueprints. That'll help, and updated goal BPs. That sounds good. So for starters, I built all of these with a one single parent goal, and so first of all, this means I don't have to copy over macros, which takes ages and is really boring. And second of all, it means I can make one lovely big blueprint, and it looks great. So the first thing, let's take a play and look at the behavior of the goal. So we notice that the goal oscillates back and forth, and if I ever score on myself here, this is very terrible. Hopefully I score soon. Please go into a goal. Might help if I wasn't terrible at this. There we go. Okay, so you notice the goal gets smaller though. Let's just have one. So we'll first take a look at how I make the goal oscillate. So every tick, what I'm doing is I'm creating the goal oscillation. So the way I'm doing this is I'm taking 4 variables. The goal location, which is just an array that takes the x, y, and z coordinates. The goal oscillation speed, which is an arbitrary float value that just controls how fast up and down the goal is moving. The goal oscillation distance, which controls how far up and down the goal is moving. And the goal angle. Now this is the angle that we want the goal to go. So in some of the maps, we have, for instance, the free-for-all map, we have goals that are on angles. Now this is really difficult to do with the way we were using matinees, and you have to like actually program in this movement for all of them, and I wasn't about to sit there and do that, so I just programmed this to it uses some trigonometry to find the correct it finds the correct angle of the goal. Like so I envisioned the goal on a circle, and then this is the goal at this angle here, centered on the center point, and we just use so the center point's here. This is the goal along this angle theta, and we can just find the y and x coordinates, because this is just a triangle. This is just a triangle, so we can just use Pythagoras on that one. So it's pretty easy to find, but and I kind of made it quite nice here, and it's all tucked away in one macro, so that seems nice. And then we just use that to set the actor rotation and location. And so you don't even have to place these goals properly. Like you can see this one's like all messed up. It's like over here or something, and I hit play and it all gets set nicely. So that's great. And then Harry was the one that made these nice little goalposts. So there we go. Okay, great. So then all this brown stuff is Harry's work. I've done that stuff in white. So then we want to set the score. All I've done here is I've used a switch thing, which is I was talking about earlier. It just takes the color of the goal, so whether it's red, blue, yellow, or green, and we just score the correct goal and carry the executive over. So that's pretty simple. Then we have, so this is a little bit of a mess, and it's because of an issue in our coding practices. We made we made ball game modes for each of our individual game modes. So 2 player, 2v2, 3-for-all, 4-for-all, they all have a game mode, which is actually totally overkill, seeing as 90% of it is repeated anyway. So I had to set all of these individually, so it overrides them. So based on the game mode that you're playing, it'll set the movement of all of these, and this is just like a big mess. It just sets a couple of array elements, it's the goal angle, etc. It just changes these variables, these movement and scale variables, not so much the scale ones, but more so the movement ones, to just be what we want them to be for the level. So after we've done that, we head into this, and this just controls the goal shrinking correctly. So first of all, we want to set the score. We want to check what the score is for the goal. Now this looks like a massive mess, and it's again a product of what I just discussed. So we actually, to avoid getting errors in our game, we have to avoid casting to a game mode that's not currently active. So the game mode in here, if it's 0, it's 2-player mode. If it's 1, it's 3-player mode, etc. So we just use a switch to select the correct game mode, and then this would have been mandatory. Whatever, it's the oh, that's a little bit laggy. Let's hope that recovers. So what it does is it takes the color of the goal, and it plugs into one of these switches, and then it'll as 2-player mode, it'll cast the correct goal color, and it'll just insert this into an array. The array up here takes the whatever score we want to get. Sorry, whatever color goal is calling this will it'll select the correct integer and it'll output it. So all this does is it stores the scores and outputs them into the later thing. It just looks really messy because you have to do it for 4 game modes? What is 5? It's 4 game modes, and like 3 players, 2 players, 4 players. It's crazy. So then after we've got the score, we can use that to plug into this. Now, this is the exact same piece of code I used in the spawner here. I just tucked it away in a macro. I use this in everything I do. It's great. So all this does is it maps a set of numbers to another set of numbers. It's just as simple as that. So if we've got a number line that goes 1 to 10, and we've got a number line here that goes 3 to 20, then it'll just map it perfectly. So it'll take these numbers, and it'll just map them onto him in perfect intervals. And so the score goes from 15 to 0 or 10 to 0, I believe, and we just wanna map them onto the width of the goal and the size of the goal components. And so all we do is we plug in the goal, the goals scored. We plug in the maximum amount of goals you can score and the minimum amount of goals you can score, which is just 1, so why bother? And then we just we plug in the maximum size post that we want and the minimum size post that we want, and we just plug it into this relative scale thing, and we just scale down the box. Simple as that. Then for movement, we do basically the same thing, but it's just the goal width maximum and the goal width minimum, and all it does, it'll just move the components, these components here, these goalposts, and it will just make them bigger or smaller depending on our needs. Usually smaller as more goals are scored. So that's why I said as you score goals on say the blue goal or something, it'll shrink and it'll raise attention or what have you. Okay, so we've got 2 things left. That's the win conditions, which are in here. We'll finish on that, and the camera blueprint. So camera blueprint. I had a working version of this up in like 1 hour, 2 hours. The rest of it took like a day, and then I kept sort of improving it and mostly fiddling with the layout to make it look really pretty, but whatever. Okay, so every tick we're moving the camera. We're moving the camera to everything with tagged active camera focused. I built almost everything in my game with just letting other players mess with it as much as possible. So if you just add the tag camera focus to anything in the game, the camera will treat it as something that it should look at, which is great. It just helps speed up workflow. It means, hey, if Harry messages me, says, hey, we need to move the camera, we need to make the camera do this and that, I can just say, hey, have you tried messing with this variable? And he can just take a look at that, he'll start messing with it, he'll say like, oh yeah, perfect, nice. And I built almost everything in mind with this project, with that in mind. Like everything will have like nicely labeled variables with little tooltips, etc. So okay, what we're doing is we're taking everything with camera focused and we're adding it to an array, and then we're just getting the location and adding the location to an array. Then we'll take the X and Y location and we'll just pop it in here for now. We'll get back to that. So we've got the X and Y location of everything. Sorry, the average X and Y location of every camera focused thing in our game. So it just means that we're always hovering over the center point of the action in our game. So let's follow this exec and just follow it over here. So this is not immediately apparent why it's obvious, but it'll come back in a second. So now what we want to do is we want to find the minimum bounding box for all camera focused objects in our level. And we want to do that so we can get the height of our camera so that we keep everything inside of the camera. So when this is once we've added something to our array, what we do is we come over here and we get the actor location of the thing we just added. So this blue line follows all the way across, and we record whether or not it exceeds the highest, lowest X and Y variable so far, and these are all set to 0 by default, I believe. So the highest X coordinate is probably like 1,000, and the lowest X coordinate is probably like -1,000. Same for Y. One of them's 2,000, one of them's 1,000. I can't remember. It doesn't really matter. And so we just record that and we store that for later. So then once this loop is complete, we come down here. We get all of the balls, And for each of them, we just find out whether or not they're exceeding a specific velocity, and that velocity is the we just set it to 4 of this array, I believe, just to save space. I kind of like when there's not many variables to mess around with. There's only 2 in this instance. Yeah, so we're just storing the velocity if it exceeds a certain number, and we're storing that as the certain number. So if a ball's going 10 velocity or what have you, it's just adding the x and y, by the way. Then we'll just store that as 10, and then if another ball is going like 100, we'll store 100, etc. And for that number, we just take this new mapping thing, and we're just saying it'll be between 0 and 1,000. It's just like an estimate. It's not really necessary. It's 100% accurate. These can be kind of arbitrary, but they kind of map. And we just map them to camera vel additional height maximum and additional height minimum. And so these are just 2 variables that control how high we want the camera to be in addition to the basic height. So when a ball's traveling really fast, we want to be able to see where it's going to go. And so what this does, it'll just move the camera up like 500 units when a ball's traveling really fast. And that just plugs it in here, and then this goes into the z-axis of the camera. So now we're here, we've got the x, y, and the z, and we're ready to go, we're ready to move the camera. So all we've done is find the x, y, and z at this point, and we're just going to move the camera. So the way this camera works is we have an ideal location for a camera, we'll call it, we'll say it's here, and we have the current location of the camera, we'll say it's here. And what we want to do is we want to move the camera from here to there. Now if we just moved it here for now instantly, this camera's like here, this camera's like here, and this is the pitch. This is going to happen in 1 frame. That's going to look really jarring if you just teleport the camera. So what we do is we want to move it really smoothly and really slowly. So the way we're doing this is we're subtracting the arrays from each other and timesing it by this number called camera smoothness. So what this essentially does is it gets a fraction of the distance and it moves it that fraction. And so this was 1/10, for instance. So we find a 1/10 of the this looks like about 1/10. Find a 1/10 of this, and then we move this camera, and we just put it. We put the new camera location here, and that's happening in 1 frame. So the next frame we find a 1/10. We get a 1/10 from here to here, and then it's like this or something. And if you've heard the myth about the tortoise racing Achilles or what have you, you'll know that as you find a fraction of a distance and you keep adding to that fraction, you never actually arrive at the desired location. So say the current camera location was here and the ideal one was here, and we wanted to take half each time, we go to here, and then we go to here, and then we go to here, and then we go to here, we go to here. And these are each 1 frame increments. So what we're doing is we're going really fast and then we're slowing down right at the end. And this generates a really nice easing in effect, or easing out, I can never remember. And so what we do is we've got our fraction of a distance to that location, and we just plug it into this new location, and then this just comes off of the completed from this for each loop, and so we just plug it in here. And then at the end we just clear our arrays. We don't clear this one. What we do is for each of them we set it to 0 again, because if we clear it, then it will just generate a lot of errors and it won't move the camera properly. But as you can see, it just makes the camera move. It's not very it's very subtle, but it doesn't need to be. It doesn't need to be like super obvious. I think the goals might be camera focus. It's kind of messing up a little bit, but it just adds like a little bit of polish, and it's great. We'll also demonstrate what happens when we have the camera smoothness set to 1. So this is what happens when the camera instantly teleports from here to here. We'll just hit play, and you'll notice it feels like really like jarring. And then when a ball spawns in, now we have to share it with the ball. And then when we hit the ball, like the camera just like instantly bounces. This feels really weird to me. And then on the same token, if we set it to 0, the camera will just move a 0th of a fraction, so it'll just never move. So I set it to 0. I think 0.01 might be fine. I think this is a little bit. This is pretty good. Okay. So that's the moving camera. And then last but not least, we have the win conditions, which I've just closed. So I'll just go open those up again. They are in blueprints, ball game modes. So as you can see, we have a game mode for each of them. Not a total fan of that decision, but I guess that's what we had to work with. Okay, so we have 4 inputs. These are the scores of the 4 players. This works with 3v3, and we don't need it for 2v2 because it's kind of obvious. And we want to find out when one of them wins, when any of them tie at the end of the round, and when each of them loses. So first of all, we're going to find out when it is. So we put each of the array integers into an array, and for each of them we just find out if it's equal to 0. Because if it's equal to 0, we know they lose. We come to this macro. This just detects when they lose. So we plug it into the switch on int, which is a great piece of thing. We do once because we don't want characters losing more than once. That sounds really bad to me. This is a little print to just show me that it's working. These are all colored based on the actual character colors. This is supposed to be where somebody destroys their character, deletes the UI, and just plays a little thing like yellow eliminated or what have you. Then we set their score to -99. That's an arbitrary number. I kind of want to set it higher because it does some funky stuff with the goal. Although we're supposed to destroy the goal anyway, so it shouldn't matter. Then we get all actors, and for each of them we just disable the collision of their goal so that you can't score on them and mess things up. And so that's just what happens when they lose. We call that one at a time. So then, if they lose, that happens. If they don't lose, we'll come in here. That's completed. We get to this branch, and all this branch does is it plugs into all these logic gates. All this is designed to do is to say whether or not one person has not lost. So these are all greater than or what have you. So these will all produce a true or false value, and this or will only activate true when exactly one of them is false, I believe. I can't remember. But if we have one winner, this will call, and it'll just go into this little winner thing. And all it does is it does a print win thing, and then just ends the game. It's not too exciting. This is built so that other people can come in and do the actual effects of the stuff. So I just did the logic behind it. So if that's not true, nobody's won yet. This is happening once every tick, by the way. So we're always checking if someone's losing or winning. We come down here, and we just check if the seconds is 0 or less. And if it is, we just clear the timer and we come into this monstrosity. This is a little bit messy. I had to build some of this like a couple times. It's a little bit frustrating to figure out. So first of all, we set a temporary number, and this is the maximum integer of the array. So this array here, we want to find out so what we're doing now is we're trying to find out if people are tying, because it's the end of the round. So it's important to figure out if 2 people are tying or if 1 person wins. That's all we care about. Yeah, we don't even call lose, I think. Oh no, we do. Okay, that's cool. So we have 4 people. We want to find out when 2 of them are tying. Now, here's a scenario. We could have 2 people on like 2 lives left, and 2 people on like 7 lives left. And we know that 7 lives left people are definitely winning, and the 2 lives left people are definitely losing. So what we do is we want to make sure that only the people with the most lives that are tying are actually tying. The people with the least lives and tying, they're losing. We don't care about them. So we set the temporary number and we call that again later. For each of the items in an array, we just check if the array element is equal to this temporary number. So the temporary number is the maximum item of the array. So this will find the 7s and not the 2s, and it will just say if you're equal to 7, yeah, you go ahead. If you're not equal to 7, you're going to be declared a loser. And notice we only declare them if they're a loser if their score value is not 99. Now remember back here in the loser thing, we set their score to 99. This is why, so we don't keep declaring losers. I also have these do once things built into like every bit of this just for extra security. But I'm just worried that the logic, it shouldn't work, but this should keep out any like edge cases scenarios. So if they're tying and their value is if their value is equal to 7, for this mythical example, it could be any number, obviously. We come down here to this for each loop. This is the same array. This is just all the same array. Let's just make that nice and straight. And we just we take the array element, and we want to find out if it's greater than any of the other array elements. Now, this is because if it's greater than 3 of them, we know they win, because they're greater than all of the rest of the players. So we just go in and we call them winners. But if it's not greater than 3 of them, if it's greater than only 2 of them, for instance, the 7, 7, 7, and 2, 2 example, we just we put them into sudden death. So this is just to make sure, even though this is happening once every frame, I don't know how like half frame is a thing, but if it is, this will catch it, and this will just make sure that only the people that are super tying are actually tying. So we go into this int, and we take the index. And all these do is just split into blue, red, yellow, green. I'm not sure if it's a good way to do it. It seems fine to me. And we just set the score to 1. And this is because the 2 people on 7, their scores don't go down to 0. The 2 people on 2, they lose, they're out of the game. 2 people on 7, they now have to not get scored on for that last life, otherwise they die. So they go into like the sudden death mode, and this is getting called once every tick, so we can just recycle this, and if these people that are on one, if one gets scored on, they instantly get called a loser, and then the last one will get consequently declared a winner. So that's everything that I've contributed to these two. Well, it's not everything. It's all of the main things. I don't know, like a lot of these little nonsensy things, but that's the majority of the things that I've contributed to this project, and some of my thought process going into it. So I guess this video is done now. Nice.